regarding Martin Luther
Ah.
and his views of the Jews. Are y'all aware of his views towards Jews? And if so, how do you reconcile them to his otherwise priceless leadership? I've held this man up as a hero and leader to my children and am shocked at his recommendations and apparent dislike of Jews. Is this true?
Well, I guess I could field this one first, since I'm a Lutheran, I guess. Now, I haven't read too much on Martin Luther. Being that I was raised Baptist most of my life, I was aware of Martin Luther as the reformer. A little known fact about Martin Luther, though, is that he actually retained most of his Catholic views after leaving the church. When he nailed the 95 Theses onto the door in that church in Wittenberg, it was primarily about the Catholic Church's teachings on indulgences. That was his primary beef with the Catholic Church. So so I do know a bit about Martin Luther. Not too well read on Luther, even though now I'm a Lutheran myself. I have heard about his extreme anti-Semitism. And so when there's a teacher with a really, really bad view like that, this has actually come up a lot recently with the riots and trying to tear down all the southern statues from the I'm blanking on the term. What do they call the southern states back in the Civil War era? It was it starts with a C. Confederacy, thank you. Where they're trying to tear down the Confederate statues because they were fighting for slavery and these kinds of things, negating all the good things that they did. And the way that I think about someone like Martin Luther, who had his extreme anti-Semitism, is, there are things about me that some people would probably find pretty bad, even in the pro-life field. Like I support capital punishment, and a lot of people think that I'm obscene because I believe that a convicted murderer, it's permissible to put him to death for his crimes. So even about me, someone who's a committed Christian, you could probably find things about me that you might find detestable if you're that emotionally attached to your views. So for someone like that, I say we just offer grace. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the greatest civil rights activists, was actually an adulterer. So if we're going to negate the good that someone does because of some extreme character flaw, then I don't really know if there's really anyone in history that we can remember fondly. So I would just say, if we're going to remember someone like Martin Luther, who had such a major impact on the church, don't necessarily forget the bad that he's done, because we want to make sure we recognize that it's bad. We want to avoid that behavior in our own lives, but I don't think that's necessarily that necessarily means that we can't remember that person for the good things that he's done. That would probably be my answer in a nutshell.
Good. Did you have something to add? You were jotting down over there.
Yeah, I did a quick read on Google real quick about it because I was unaware of this part of his life. But again, it goes back to the same thing that me and Patrick have talked about over and over again, is that we're all flawed and that we all have worldviews that are different than somebody that makes us obtuse. And you read his arguments on there, he had some impersonal encounters to come up with those views. And that's why he espoused them so much. It's more than obvious. But his views are because he viewed them as a cult. And if you read a guy, and I hope I'm quoting it correctly, Madison, who wrote a book about cults, he was very angry at some of those cults. He didn't think they should be around. But Luther said in this article I just read that we should kill them. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh. But so he has some anger issues. And that's why, Jesus died for us. We've all sinned. So on one hand, Luther did something good in his life, and then on the other hand, he didn't. Yeah,
I don't exactly know how to reconcile such a great church leader was someone who would hate the Jews, considering that the Jews, Christianity sprang from Judaism. Jesus was a Jew. The disciples were Jews. I don't know how a Christian could hate Jews personally, but, nevertheless.
My understanding is that, and it's been a while since I've read on any of this. My understanding is that his anti-Semitic views is something that developed later. Like a lot of the writings where he's, flat out saying, they're horrible, we need to kill them, kind of stuff, is as he's getting older, like in the last 4 or 5 years of his life, I've heard some people suppose that maybe he was getting senile even. I mean, he was just getting, getting old. And but I think it all comes back down to who of us is perfect? Not a single one.
Yeah.
There's Jesus, and then my wife comes pretty darn close. But, other than that, ain't none of us perfect. And so.
You mean Molly?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I missed that world, man.
Okay.
Is your anniversary coming up or something?
Yeah, there you go. I think so. Yeah.
Birthday's next week.
Okay.
But it's the same thing, y'all have echoed that no one's perfect. And you can have someone who is a leader, who is respected, who is upheld for something they did, regardless of something else in their life that they got horribly wrong. And I think that as Christians, right, who is it that we're supposed to emulate? Who is it that we're supposed to hold up as our hero and our model? Well, it's Jesus, right? I mean, we do influence each other, and but we shouldn't engage in hero worship of other human beings, right? So that, because we all know we're all be flawed, we all know we're going to have problems, and it's so easy to say, well, I don't see how anyone who's Christian could. Well, I do, because I know the wickedness and the darkness that's in my own heart. So of course I can see someone who could, buy into and get fooled by, and all kinds of dark and misleading things.
One of his things that he said was, for years, Mark may remember this, that if they don't choose Jesus, if they don't choose Christianity, then people would ask me, what would be your evangelical model? And I would be like, well, it'll be easy. Pull out the gun and tell them to go to hell and pull the trigger. And because I didn't choose Jesus. So if you don't choose Jesus, die and go to hell now. Let's end the argument. If you read the article that Martin Luther wrote, his argument was, if they won't choose God, let them die. So he came to some sort of realization that if they're not going to repent and they're not going to follow God, well, then they should die. In the argument. And I was like, oh my gosh. But you read it on there, he really goes into great detail and language of his time of why he didn't like them. And that's a different worldview for me. So.
Well, and, the world Martin Luther was in, I mean, you stop and think about it. That was some brutal stuff. Protestant versus Catholic, different sects of Protestantism. I mean, this is where, that we're burning people at the stake and chopping heads off. And not to say, that was okay, but to just understand the context of a life that would put someone in a frame of mind like that. But again, I think, what I was trying to say before is about, it's not about, the person. You look at what they did. You look at the idea that they were defending, and you focus on that, on the accomplishment of truth being put forth and overcoming falsehood, and you celebrate that. You don't necessarily celebrate the man, because, again, we're all flawed. We all have sin. We all have our problems.